Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. British author George Eliot said, "Animals are such agreeable friends. They'll ask no questions and they'll pass no criticisms." Well, with 6 shelters and 60,000 animals annually, our guest today understands this intimately. I'm delighted to be joined by General Manager of LA Animal Services, Brenda Barnette. So nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Great. Needless to say, we're all experiencing this horrible pandemic, and it's not just affecting humans, it's definitely affecting our 4-legged friends as well. So what are some of the major things that you at LA Animal Services have had to deal with?
Well, for one, when COVID first started, and we were concerned about the health and safety of our staff and our volunteers, we were given instructions that the volunteers couldn't be in the buildings until we came up with safety protocols. And then we also were concerned about our staff. So we divided them into 3 12-hour shifts, similar to what LAPD or the fire department does, to keep them safe. And that made it necessary for us to temporarily close 2 of our shelters. One was under construction and one was not. So that, we had the space. We had the community in LA is pretty amazing, animal lovers. And during the month of March, about over 2,200 animals left our shelters, giving us the space to be able to do this. And they left as adoptions, they left as return to owners, as fosters, and then our New Hope Rescue partners took a lot of them too. So we got our numbers down and we were able to consolidate for the short term. We didn't know it was going to be 5 months.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. And none of us knew, and it's going to seem like it's going to be a lot longer than that. So I know there is a lot of concern about those 2 shelters that had to be temporarily closed. So is there any change in the planning? Is there anything going on? Any updates in regards to reopening those? Or
Sure, there's always something going on in LA, as you know. And the biggest impact on us was when we got our budget, and like every other city department, we took a fairly sizable cut, nearly $4 million. So we started trying to figure out, are we going to have enough staffing to reopen everything? So we're trying to work on that. North was under construction, finishing the Prop F building process for that, and we are expected to get that building returned to us the end of September. There sometimes are construction delays, but we're hoping to get that back at the end of September and to be able to move in and start working out of that building. We're also working with the community, trying to come up with sort of a hybrid type plan that we can use for West Valley. And I'm saying West Valley, we're doing a lot of studies. We're studying population, number of cases, number of licensed dogs. I mean, every one of the little things that you can imagine that we would want to consider to make sure that West Valley is the best place for that kind of a setup. But that's what we're looking at right now. And we've had 2 meetings with staff and our labor partners, 2 meetings with our volunteers. These are all by Zoom. 2 meetings with our New Hope Rescue partners, and then 3 community meetings so far to take public input. So now we're back to the drafting stage. We're taking all the comments, all the input, and trying to see, what people really, really are concerned about. And so far, they're really concerned about having a municipal facility where they can come 24 hours a day if they have a sick, injured, or lost animal. They're also concerned about having, there's a sort of an agricultural area at West Valley where we can hold lost horses, and yes, horses do get lost, cows get lost. Sometimes we pick them up and we have to put them there till we find their owner to reunite them. And then sometimes our officers go out and they find situations where large animals aren't being properly cared for, and we might have to bring them in until that situation is resolved. And they, I think there's a third thing that's slipping my mind right now. Maybe I can find it in my notes, or maybe I'll come back to it in a few minutes.
Sure.
But we're trying to find out what's the community really have to have, and then we'll decide, is that the community where we should do a mixed use, or should it be another shelter? We're studying all the angles. We're primarily discussing it with the West Valley community because that's where we think it probably should be.
I obviously have an enormous amount of questions about household pets, but you just brought up, a subject that maybe, we hadn't even thought about. It's fire season. You know, there are a lot of ag areas that are under threat in this regard.
Right.
So as part of the services of LA Animal Services, do you house ag animals when they are, you know, in threat of
Yes.
fire?
Absolutely. We have the first use of Hanson Dam. There's over 100 stalls there. We can also use the LA Equestrian Center, and then we have a mutual aid agreement with the county. So sometimes we share Pierce College, and mostly the county probably uses Lancaster Fairgrounds. So, and those are for the large animals. We also have this thing that we like to call the Mighty Mover, which is really a big
Horse trailer?
Well, it's an enclosed trailer, and it has stainless steel compartments in it, and it comes with a generator that provides heating, air conditioning, and ventilation, so we can take that on a site. And we had that, was it 3 years ago that we had the creek fire?
Mm-hmm.
We had that at Hanson Dam for the creek fire. We also use that if there's an apartment fire and the residents have pets. We park it outside, and as the residents come out with their pets, we will take them and put them into the Mighty Mover to keep them safe until they can reorganize their lives, whatever they need to do to get their companion animal back.
I guess, you know, every time I have an opportunity to learn about the departments within the city of Los Angeles, I'm always fascinated by the expansive nature of what it
Yes.
is that they do. So naturally someone thinks LA, you know, Animal Services, if there's a lost animal, it ends up in a shelter, someone goes and either retrieves the animal or adopts the animal or something. But obviously there's a lot more to what LA Animal Services does.
There's a lot, and there's a lot of amazing community involvement too. You know, we're sort of studying the situation now because the big national groups have been telling us for a long time that if an animal gets out in its own neighborhood, it will get home faster if the neighbors help the neighbors.
Oh.
You know, so we're watching that. Nextdoor is a great app for people to use if they have a lost dog. We also set up a Lost and Found Facebook page, and there are several others. There's a San Fernando one, and I can't remember all the names of them, but there are 2 or 3 different Lost and Found pages. And as I'm watching them, I see that, as you know, if the animal stays close to home, it's likely going to get home within 24 or 30 hours. If it ends up in the shelter, the first thing that's going to happen is the owner's going to search the neighborhood, and then they're going to say, well, if it's not here, where's it going to be? So it's going to take them a few days to figure out that the animal might be in the shelter, even though all of our animals are posted online. People just don't think about that right away.
Okay, so in this pandemic, there have been a lot of news articles, et cetera, about people embracing the idea of animal companionship to help psychologically, to help emotionally, and to just enrich this experience. Have you noticed an enormous amount of adoptions within LA Animal Services, and are you worried that that is going to maintain its integrity once we're all a little bit more free?
I think we've definitely seen, matter of fact, we ran out of foster animals at one point, and we're getting more animals in all the time, but we got to the point that most of the animals were a little bit larger, not necessarily suitable for a first-time foster parent who didn't have a lot of animal experience, so we kind of ran out. But now we're getting more animals in, so we're trying to go back to those people and give them that foster opportunity. And then some of the fosters are what we lovingly call foster failures, and they do end up adopting. So about, maybe 6 weeks ago, I'm not exactly sure.
That's a good thing.
That's a great thing. So about 6 weeks ago, we contacted all the fosters and said, do you want to adopt, or do you want us to go ahead and say your animal is available for adoption? So we did that, and some of them turned the animal they had in because they were truly in their heart foster parents, and then they fostered something else. So we've been really fortunate with the community. We've also done a lot of adoptions, and you know, the way that we've been trying to help people, because they can't come to the shelter, they
Right.
can't get the kind of advice because of social distancing and safety. But one of our director of volunteer services set up some Zoom meetings. So she has Zoom meetings regarding dogs, bunnies, and cats. And she has experts on so that people can call in or ask questions live and get help with their animals. So we've had a couple people write in and say, oh my gosh, that was the best thing ever, because thought we were going to have to bring that dog back, and we were able to solve that problem with the advice that we got.
Really?
Yeah. So you know, we're trying to be as creative as we can and engage the community. You know, I'm very concerned, and I think animal welfare across the United States is very concerned about what's going to happen when the evictions start. So there are other things that we're starting to do to try to help people keep their companion animals. For example, we've got 2 food banks set up now, one at Chesterfield Square and one at East Valley. They are by appointment, but we have people can make appointments. We do have some walk-ins too. They can come and get pet food, you know, for their companion animals if they're, you know, having financial troubles. We're also working on a program to help keep the companions in the homes by providing some veterinary services. If it's the cost of a veterinary exam or treatment, and if they had help with that, they could still keep their pet, then we're working on a program like that. We're also we have a program set up, but we haven't been utilizing it, so we're getting ready to utilize that to help our New Hope adoption partners if they take an animal that has medical needs, so that we can help them with the care of that animal, at least enough to get them started. So we're working on ways to help the community keep their companion animals as we know the economic downfall is going to be devastating.
So is New Hope a separate nonprofit organization that works with animals?
Great question. It's about 300 nonprofits.
Oh, okay.
We have, in the city of Los Angeles, we have about 300 nonprofit rescue groups who come and take some of our animals out of our shelters and find homes for them. And really, without this community involvement, whether it's the New Hope Partners, we had an amazing thing happen over the 4th of July where people were out in the streets with scanners, and they were scanning lost dogs and getting them home because they'd been frightened by the fireworks. I saw pictures of people who had crates set up in their living room, and they called it a safe house, where a dog could stay overnight trying to reunite it with its family. And it really made a huge difference. I mean, we usually get well over 1,000 animals, or around 1,000 animals in the 4th of July.
Run on the 4th, right?
Yeah, that get over that weekend. But this year it was under 100. Because we had so much help and assistance from the community. So that's, you know, I think that's going to be the name of the future, is trying to re-envision sheltering in a little different way, where we have a lot of community involvement from people who love to do that kind of stuff.
You're a little bit of a trendsetter when it comes to naming programs, because your foster program was actually shelter at home, which we all now know having a different definition entirely.
Right. Well, you know what happens is people find dogs or cats on the street, and they say, oh, I don't want to take it to the shelter. So we said, okay, take it home, but register it with us, have it checked to see if it has a microchip, give us a picture, we'll post it on our website, and everyone will know, not everyone will know your name and address, but they'll know it's in a home, and if they see it on the website, then we'll contact you. You can bring it in and not be involved in the meeting, because we have to protect people's safety and security, so we don't give out names and addresses, but that way the person can come and see if that truly is their animal. Wow. And then at the end of 30 days, if the person still has the animal and the owner hasn't turned up, they can adopt that animal at no charge. Or they can bring it back to us and we'll find it another home.
So how are things going at large? Because I know that when you arrived, you really wanted to help the LA Animal Services become what is considered a no-kill. So first of all, what is the definition of no-kill? Because I'm sure there's always scenarios in which humane euthanization is necessary. But how are we doing, and is any of this going to impact that?
Well, we don't know what the impact is going to be. We're trying to shore up so that we don't have that issue. But right now, at the end of July, we were actually at a 90%, a little bit over a 90% life save rate. Now, that doesn't mean we've made it, but that's typically the definition, is that 90% of the animals who come into the shelters, dogs and cats, go out to happy endings. So we've been doing really well with dogs. We're probably at 93 or 94% on the dogs. We're not as high on the cats. The city's been under an injunction for a number of years, over 10 years, keeping us from providing some services for community cats. We're working on that injunction. We hope to get it lifted, but that has held us back a little bit on cats. So the cats, tend to be more in the 80 percentiles, you know, and so it's a little bit tricky on doing the count. I wouldn't say because we were 90% at the end of July that we should declare no kill. I think we have to maintain it for a period of time before we could do that.
So what would the injunction be that would prohibit you from, you know, being able to actively manage the cat population?
Well, it's just an injunction that was brought against the city. It must be 12 years ago now because it was well in place when I got here 10 years ago. So, and it was brought about by people who were concerned about endangered bird species, that the community cats or the feral cats would kill the birds. And, you know, we like birds too. So we like all animals. And so we believe we can figure a way to coexist happily together without losing the valuable bird populations.
So one of the big components of just any feral animal, cats in particular, is, you know, they procreate pretty quickly. So what are the policies with LA Animal Services in regards to spaying and neutering any animal that comes into the shelter?
Well, we spay and neuter dogs, cats, and bunnies before they're adopted out. So a lot of times what's happening with the kittens is people will find litters from a feral cat, and they will socialize the litter, so they're no longer feral cats. So this time of year, when what we call kitten season, we're usually absolutely swamped, just on overflow. This year, once again, the community is stepping up. We've got at least 3 major cat rescue groups and I think 2 or 3 other medium-sized ones who are taking a lot of those kittens, and we are providing the spay and neuter for them, but they're doing the work. They're doing the bottle feeding and putting them in foster care, and we still have some in the shelter too. So we're sort of sharing the load right now because there is no way with our staffing limitations and all that we could have handled kitten season the way we handled it last year. So again, it's the community coming together.
It's amazing that there's such a thing as kitten season.
I know.
Not all breeds of animals are popular. You know, there's always a little bit of controversy about pit bulls. So how is LA doing with its pit bull population, and what are some of the misnomers about pit bulls? Because my best friend has, you know, Tina the Pitty, and she's just a doll.
I know.
So, you know, what are we mistaking? What mistakes are we making when we're just looking at that breed of animal?
You know, it's a lot like equality and inclusion, making judgments that are unfounded. You know, it's just another diverse species. And if they're raised poorly, if they're treated unkindly, if they're used for illegal purposes like fighting, they could be severely damaged. But for the most part, they're just really fun dogs.
But huge jaws, no less.
Yeah, but they look worse than, you know, I mean, sometimes people will cross the street to, you know. Now, if you feel fear, you shouldn't put yourself in that situation because maybe the dog will pick up on it and will be like, oh, you know, what am I doing wrong? But they're actually great dogs. I know people who have 3 or 4 pitties living in their home, no problems ever. I have a friend who has a pitty and she has numerous cats, and the pitty is like just fine with the cats. So it really is. Work with somebody at the shelter to tell you about the individual dog. We also have a program that's run by someone else that's a partnership with us, and she takes about 50 pitties at a time up to I think it's Lancaster Prison, and and the guys train them. So it's like 3 trainers per dog. They have the dog for like 6 or 8 weeks, and a lot of these dogs are pre-adopted. So they come back from their training, and the adopter has a trained animal to take home with them.
Wow.
I think it's called Paws for Life, and it's an amazing program. And I've met some of the people from the prison who do the training and work with the guys, and they're just amazing. So if you want a trained pitty, call up the shelters and we'll tell you about Alex's program.
What are the things that you suggest when someone is considering adopting anything?
I think everyone in the family should be on the same page and want to adopt. and sort of have a family conversation. And if you take the children to look at animals, and that's harder to do now because of COVID, but I used to always tell parents, don't tell your children that we're coming to get a dog today. Tell your children that you're going looking at dogs so that you don't build up their expectation and suddenly you have crying children because we didn't find one today, because sometimes you have to look at a couple of different dogs before you find the right fit. And then I think sort of your own lifestyle. If you're a jogger or very athletic or like to go on hikes, then a pitty might be perfect for you. Now, I'm not saying that some pitties aren't couch potatoes, because I know a lot that are. But if you mostly like to sit around and read and watch TV or something like that, you might want a little lap dog who will just sit on your lap and be there with you all the time. So I think look at your own lifestyle, look at your physical layout. If you've got a little bit larger dog, it's wonderful to walk a dog every time they need to go out, but sometimes it's nice to be able to let them out in the backyard on their own for a few minutes too. So you might want to make sure you have a backyard if it's going to be a little bit larger dog. The little dogs, they can have little piddle pads in the corner somewhere if you want to live like that. I mean, I have a couple of dogs that when I'm going to go away, they're little, I'll put down their little pads. Usually they hold it. They don't even do anything, and I get back and let them out in the yard, and they're fine. But just in case, I'd give them that little opportunity or option.
We need to be conscientious of what our weather is, in particular right now. Right. It's not just kitten season.
No, right. It's dog days of summer.
You bet.
Yeah.
So what are some of the big mistakes people make? There's obvious ones: don't ever leave your dog in the car, all that kind of stuff. But there are subtle ones too, like
like walking down the sidewalk when it's in the 90s or over 100, they can burn the bottoms of their little pads if they're walking on the cement, and I think that's something people don't realize a lot of times. I think the dogs and even some of the cats that have the mashed-in faces, they have a harder time breathing.
Oh.
So they're going to have a little bit more struggle with the hot weather than some of the others. They should always have plenty of cold water. And, a little tiny container of water gets hot really quickly in the sun, but a large container of water will stay cool a little bit longer. They should always have shade. I mean, even honestly, at my house, on these hot days, my horses are in the barn with a fan on them. And then at night, we put them out in the arena to get some exercise. So you really
gotta adjust their schedule.
We readjusted their schedule completely because we didn't want them standing out in that heat. So all animals can be affected by heat. So even livestock need shade. They need plenty of fresh water. And the same is true for the smaller animals too, for the companion animals.
But I didn't realize how fragile bunnies were.
Oh, they are very fragile, yes. And what we do for the bunnies at the shelter is we take these plastic bottles of water and freeze them, and we put it under the hay. Now the building's air conditioned, but they still get hot. And where we have glass windows where the sun's coming in, even with air conditioning, sometimes the rooms will be warm. So we put those little bottles of ice under their hay, and it cools them off. They seem to like it. They don't really like loose ice cubes.
Okay, no loose ice cubes for the bunnies. Given the circumstances and trying to manage all this, obviously, with the shelters and with the volunteers and everything like that, what are your main concerns? I know we were talking earlier about getting the volunteers back in and making sure that, so are you worried about how things are going to be reestablished for the benefit of the animals, and how can people offer help to you?
Yeah, well, I think, what we're really concerned about now is what's going to happen when the evictions start and when the unemployment runs out and the stimulus checks run out and people are really desperate and they want to keep these animals, and these are going to be animals who were family members.
Sure.
And they probably slept in the bed with the people, maybe slept with the children. And when you're giving up everything in your life, your housing, your income, and then suddenly you're having to give up your companion animal, that's very hard on the entire family, especially the children. So we're looking at ways that we can help people keep their animals. I think that's the most important thing. And then if they can't and we can't work with them to keep their pet, we want to make sure that those animals are ones that we have a plan for, that we can turn them around and get them into another home of their own. The last thing we want to do is to have our staff face having to possibly euthanize a lot of wonderful animals. So we're trying to do everything we can to keep the families together first, and second, if we can't, to make sure we have a process and a plan in place to get these animals into great homes. So it's a big headache for the entire, it's not just Los Angeles, it's everywhere in the country, whether it's a small town with a small shelter or a large city like LA with 6 shelters. But we're trying our best to get all 6 of them open so we have the space we need. We may have to be creative about that, and that's what we're working on.
Not everybody loves all animals.
Right.
So there are some people that might need to, voice their opinion in a different direction. So what about nuisance animals? I mean, obviously there are those animals that bark consistently, especially now that we're all home and we're trying to meet on Zoom or we're trying to teach our children or whatever.
Right.
So what are the opportunities for people who need to address nuisance animals?
Well, if there are too many cats running through your yard because somebody is not spaying and neutering, you can call us. We'll go out. It's very difficult, quite honestly, to catch all those cats and take them in, but we can go out and work with the person, tell them that there is a 3-cat limit in the city right now and that they really need to not put food outdoors. The other thing about putting food outdoors for community cats is that it inadvertently means they're going to be feeding wildlife, and that's actually illegal. So, we can talk to them about that and try to get them to sort of curtail their activities. Barking dogs, you file a complaint with the department, and it depends on the situation. Sometimes we'll send a letter out and say, your neighbors are concerned, and then sometimes it'll come to a full administrative hearing. And the results of an administrative hearing like that often are requiring that the person get some training for themselves and the pet to know how to stop that kind of barking that's disruptive to the neighbors. It's not an easy fix. It's not the easiest fix at all. But, if you're really dedicated to your animal and it's standing out in the backyard barking and driving your neighbors crazy, one solution might be he can't be out in the backyard after 8 p.m. at night or before 7 in the morning unless you go out with him and make sure he's just taking a potty break and not barking.
Are you getting more complaints now that everybody's working at home? Are you hearing more?
Less.
Are you really?
Yeah, because the animals are so happy.
Oh,
yeah, they're happy to
point.
be. Yeah. Now we're getting concerns from people about coyotes and opossums and things like that. What I usually tell people about the possums is you want them because if there's a tick in your backyard, they're going to eat it, and they're pretty docile animals. They're not going to hurt you. Don't feed them because that just makes them want to move in. But so you don't want to do that. You don't want to feed any wildlife. The coyotes are pretty shy. We have several videos, and we do regular wildlife seminars on Zoom now, of course. They used to be in live,
right.
But now they're on Zoom, where we try to give people suggestions. I mean, just sort of taking an umbrella and opening and closing it will scare a coyote away in most situations. And there aren't that many aggressive coyotes, but if someone runs into one, then we'll work with California Fish and Wildlife on that kind of a situation. But
they'll still chomp on your cats, though.
Keeping cats, small dogs, and children indoors unless they're supervised, if you know you have coyotes around. I live in an area where there are a lot of coyotes. They were out just singing. They call them the song dog. And they were out just making, all kinds of noise last night. Now, what that says to me is when my little dogs go outside, either I go with them or the big dogs go with them.
There you go, because will kind of equal the playing field
right.
there. If someone wants to get some more information, the best way is?
They can look on our website, laanimalservices.com. People send me emails all the time. It's brenda.barnette, B-A-R-N-E-T-T-E, at lacity.org. We're pretty available, and we try to be, and I think that's very important for animal services.
I really appreciate all this great information and your time, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right. And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.